Hello fellow 3D enthusiast, my name is Ian, and today I wanted to do another quick breakdown of a part of this shot, and that is this part right here. Before the explosion bit, which we did last week, I just like to break down the material of this piston object. And this could also be used for a whole lot of things, so don't just think back to this tutorial when you're working on pistons. You could see it could probably be a really nice record effect as well. But let's go into the node settings here, and I'll show you from the ground up what we're doing here. So first of all, let's just grab the light and the piston, go into an isolated scene so we can see it a little bit clearer. I just had a pretty basic principled BSDF. I just turned up the metallic, and I've put a nice little metal texture like this into the roughness of this object. And when we take a look at that, it's got a pretty nice beat up looking effect. But you can see it's a little bit too perfect. So what we're going to do is work on some nodes to go into the normal slot here and give it that nice radial bump that you saw earlier. So let's just kind of split the view a little bit here so we can see a little bit better what's going on in the nodes. I'm going to start by adding in a Shift A texture and a gradient texture. And if we just take a look at this, that's pretty nice. We've got a smooth black to white transition from the bottom to the top. If we switch this to spherical or quadratic sphere, let's go spherical to start. You can see things get a little bit wonky here. Let's go Control T with this node selected, and this will work if you have Node Wrangler enabled. If you don't, it won't work. But basically, I'm just adding in a texture coordinate node, and we're going to use the object instead of the generated to go right into the vector of the mapping. And this can be a little bit tricky because you can't really see where the sphere went. We're just looking at the surface of it, and it's actually in the middle of it, and it's too small to see anywhere else. So let's take the scale and just drop that down a little bit until we start to see something. There it is. You can see the sphere coming through. And what we want to do, oh, by the way, I've just been dragging. If you click the top one and drag all of these values, then you can change them all at once. But basically, we want to wait till we can just barely see the edge of the sphere here on the side. And then I'm going to grab it and move it, in this case, along the y-axis until it's all the way up to the front here. And now we've got a white part in the middle, and it's black around the edges. Cool. So now what we're going to do is, instead of using this to shade the surface, we're going to use this radial effect as texture coordinates for another texture. So I'm going to go Shift A and add in a noise texture. Here it is. If we take a look here, this is pretty exciting looking. If we go just to the factor and view that rather than the color, you can see it's a nice black and white texture. And we can take the factor and drop it into the normal, but that won't be quite good enough on its own. You get some really strange stuff if you do that. So let's run it through a Shift A vector bump node. And I'm going to switch the normal input here to be the height. And now you can see we get this really dramatic bump map here. And I really like this. It looks really bold, but it's also got the nice randomization of the roughness texture. And I think it's a really nice combination. So if we want this to be a little bit more fine, we can turn up the scale like this. And we get this really smooth effect going on now. And this is actually an effect that is quite similar to anisotropic shading. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but it's actually a shader that we only have in cycles, I believe. Yeah, you can't see it here. And that's kind of what you get when you've got brushed radial metal for like the bottom of pots and pans and things, and records and pistons in this case. So we can mess with the strength of this if we want. We can make it a little bit less noticeable, but I kind of like it all the way up to the max. Okay, I just got really sidetracked. As I was editing this, I thought, I feel like we could do something else with this. And it turns out we very much can, and you can do some absolutely insane things when you start feeding textures into vectors. So the only thing I did here differently, if we mute these nodes, you have the exact same thing that we were just working on. But let's delete them for a second. Before the gradient texture, which looks like this, you can actually feed in another vector. Let's just grab a Shift A noise texture here. And we can take this and drop it into a color mix RGB. And you can see that already does some kind of strange things here. But if we take the factor and put it into the second color here of the mix node, that gets fairly interesting. It's like, okay, there's this, and then you mix it with this. Yep, that's pretty strange. But if you make it an overlay, let's see, where is overlay? There it is. And then turn up the factor, you start to get this like really strange warped effect. It's kind of like almost like the rings of a tree, or in some cases even like Damascus steel when you look back at the metal shader. And I just thought that was so cool. You can change the noise texture properties by, you could turn up the scale or turn down the scale, it becomes less or more wavy. You can change the distortion, and that makes things absolutely insane as well. And so I just wanted to share this option with you, just to show you that you can do some absolutely insane things with these techniques. So thanks for sticking around to the end here. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about visual effects in Blender, I've created a completely free video for you that goes over 5 different tips in about 10 minutes on how you can integrate your CG creations into real-life footage. So if that sounds interesting to you, there's a link in the description. Definitely go ahead and check that out. But hey, I'd say we're done here, so I hope you have an excellent day, and cheers!